This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic. What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is July 8th, 2024. Jonathan Osborne here, as always, joined by my co-host, Luke Sylvia. Now, go and get your money, German duffel bag boy. Franz Wagner with the five-year, $224 million max extension. They said it wasn't going to happen. It happened. Luke, how do we feel? Franz Wagner getting paid.
I tweeted this out after it happened, and I essentially said, if you are a Magic fan, meaning you paid attention, you watched Magic basketball this year, and you didn't think Franz Wagner was getting the max, I don't know what to tell you. There was no reason not to. It's deserved. And people want to nitpick and they want to say his 3-point percentage and they're scared it's going to stay that way forever. Well, we have other data points that suggest it's not going to stay that way forever. He's simply getting used to the role that he's got. He's got Paolo Banchero by his side now. You add a guy like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to the mix. Franz isn't going to have to force as much. He won't be shooting as late into the shot clock now, ideally. Everything points to you're paying Franz Wagner not for who he is right now. You're locking him down for the next 5 years. And if you play your cards right, he's going to continue to develop, and he's going to continue to play in pinstripes. So for me, you're paying what he's going to become, and people can talk about it such an overpay, but wait till you see the contracts these guys start getting. It just happened to be Franz's time to get the extension, but this is just going to become normal for players that a team believes in fully, and also to couple that with the Magic don't have a choice. Franz Wagner wants the rookie max. You give him the rookie max. And obviously he's going to want it. You have to keep him. You're not going to piss him off. You're going to continue to have this great relationship with him. And you've just gained more trust from him by giving him this rookie max. And you pretty much have guaranteed Franz is going to continue to give you 110% effort because he sees this organization trusts him.
So the extension will actually kick in after this season. So he still makes $7 million this year. And then with the way the cap is projected to go up, he's going to make basically 25% of the cap moving forward, unless he wins a league MVP or makes one of the All-NBA teams. And there's some like award-based incentives that can push that up to 30% of the cap. But starting next year, he's projected to make $38.6 million. 41.7, 44.8, 47.9, and $51 million in 30. And then when he's an unrestricted free agent in 2030, his cap hold is going to be $74.7 million. So, like, don't get mad at Franz for signing the contract there. This is just the state of affairs when it comes to finances in the NBA these days, due to these crazy TV deals that the league is signing, like $76 billion over the next 10 years. Yeah, the players are going to get their cut.
And I want to read this really quickly from Clutch Points, who put out a post about the Magic being the only NBA franchise. So it's basically, I'll just read the caption. Every single NBA franchise has had a player earn at least $100 million. Well, except for one. The Orlando Magic are the only team in NBA history to not have a player earn at least $100 million with the franchise. According to Hoops Hype, the current record-holding max earner for the Magic is Nikola Vucevic at $91.8 million. In second place is arguably the greatest player in franchise history, as we call him the first in franchise history, Dwight Howard, who finished his Magic tenure having earned 83.2. And then it goes on to say, now the Magic have signed Franz Wagner, could be up to worth to $270 million if he does make an All-NBA team. Regardless, the Magic have their first $100 million player in franchise history, and it's only going to take Wagner 6 years to get there. So that's the difference in today's landscape, right? It's only going to take him 6 years to get there. Whereas you've got guys like Vooch, who where it was in the 90s, took him more time, and then obviously Dwight Howard. Like Franz Wagner it's just the landscape. Like for the day and age he's in, like Franz Wagner is lucky that like this is how the pay scales are going right now. That's the case for every player in the NBA. You're making so much money to play basketball, and Franz Wagner is the beneficiary and the well-deserved beneficiary.
I've been banging like the Franz Wagner max drum for like the past, I don't know, it feels like 5-6 months. And there are people that have, argued against that. And so a few weeks back, I went to Brandon Jones, who does like a lot of like analytical stuff. Like when I went to Brandon, I said, hey man, do you believe that Franz is a max guy? Because if you do, I need you to do some work for the agenda. If not, I'm not going to force you to help me push my agenda. But Brandon went to work and we retweeted it, I think earlier today or yesterday. If you're not following Brandon, first of all, you can find him at ORL_analytics on Twitter. Does analytic breakdown, mostly for the Magic, but really for guys across the league. But Brandon put together a 15-tweet thread making the case for Franz Wagner to be a max player. And I just wanted to throw like some of those like numbers out there to give people an idea. So he went and looked at box sum, which is the like sum of their points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. In his rookie year, Franz had a box sum of 23.9. Over the last 10 years, there were 26 players to have achieved that number or more in their rookie season. Only 5 did not receive a max extension. So 21 out of the 26 players did receive a max extension. When we go to his rookie year, he had a box sum of 27.4. In the last 10 years, 38 players reached this mark. Only 9 players did not receive a max extension. And then in year 3, he had a box sum of 30.2. 34 third-year players had reached that number in the last 10 years, and only 4 did not receive a max extension. I'm not going to go through the entire thread. If you want to go check that out for yourself, it's awesome. But that just goes to show you that like upwards of 85% of these guys over the course of the last 10 years to put up the numbers that Franz has been putting up, those guys have got max extensions. The third-year players who did not receive max extensions were John Collins, Colin Sexton, Tyler Hero, and Jabari Parker. I think most of us would agree that Franz clears all of those guys, right? Like maybe you could make the argument for Tyler Hero, a guy who's had, some more playoff experience, but like for the most part, I think we would all agree that Franz is better than those guys and fits more into the category of the guys that did receive the max extension. And there are people that are saying, why would you do this now? You could have waited a year. Basically, in my opinion, what it came down to is the Magic weighed the financial benefits of pushing this extension for Franz to next year, where he does have the opportunity to go into restricted free agency if he wanted to, and go out and get an offer, or maybe the Magic just max him outright, whatever the case may be. You have to weigh that, which the Magic at this point are not going to have cap space next season, regardless of whether or not they were to sign Franz Wagner to this extension. So you had to weigh, like, is it worth it financially versus what I think people are underrating is everybody on the team this offseason, like almost literally everybody on the team got paid this offseason. And there's a human element to this, right? Like you want to feel like you're valued and that, the team that you're playing for sees the potential that you have and you want to feel compensated for that. So the Magic just decided, hey, let's not even take the risk of ruffling any feathers here. Let's go ahead and get it done. I don't have a problem with it. I've always believed that Franz is a max guy. I believe that he's going to be a max guy moving forward. Like we can talk about the 3-point shooting. One of the stats that Brandon talked about in that thread is how 3-point percentage is not quote unquote like a sticky stat. Your last year's production doesn't always correlate to the following year. So first couple of years, he shot the ball pretty well. Last year, he didn't shoot the ball so well. Next year, just because he didn't shoot the ball well this year, doesn't mean that he won't shoot the ball well next year. Talked about like 3-point attempts and the volume of threes that you take is much more a sticky stat. Like your previous 3-point attempts is a good indicator of your future 3-point attempts. And you just look at Franz and the way that he's been able to shoot from behind the arc in previous seasons, the way that he's been able to be efficient from the free throw line. The indicators show that he should project as at least a league average 3-point shooter moving forward. And if that's like, if Franz shot 34% from behind the arc this year, nobody is questioning whether or not he's a max guy. Some people are even trying to bring up his poor shooting performance in one game, in game 7 in the playoffs this year, to try to justify him not being a max guy. And all of that to me is just ridiculous. It's
the same narrative of people who just troll, and I guess they've convinced themselves that it's like the reality and all the volume and data sample size they need, as the people who say like Klay Thompson went 0 for 10 in whatever it was, the elimination game. And it's like, we all know good and well that doesn't mean Klay Thompson can't shoot the crap out of the basketball and that he's not one of the best shooters of all time. We know that. So with Franz Wagner, you mentioned something like these players, there's a human element. They want to feel valued. That's exactly what this is, right? This is not how much does another front office value Franz Wagner. This is, in their opinion, none of that matters. It's how much do the Orlando Magic value Franz Wagner? How much do they value him on the court? How much do they value him as a presence in the locker room, as a relational piece within the organization? They value him across the board. He seems to be an incredible dude. He works his butt off. The numbers are there. He wasn't supposed to be this good. And I think we've quickly lost sight of that. Now, do not get me wrong. This absolutely means there is a higher standard to hold Franz Wagner to. Moving forward, this trajectory has to increase at the pace that it's gone his entire career thus far, and like his early career, right? He has got to continue to go up and to the right rapidly. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of people that come out of the woodwork talking about, oh, I knew he wasn't worth the max. But let's be clear. As long as the Magic and Franz Wagner raise a banner, contend for championships, it won't matter, right? Because his contract, all of that plays a piece in the roster that's constructed. It's going to not, the front office won't be able to do as much now that Franz Wagner is highly paid like this moving forward, obviously starting the next season. But now, like the Magic are all in on Franz Wagner, and he's going to have to continue to progress, and I think he will.
Yeah, to me, this was an absolute no-brainer. Just funny to see some of the conversation around not Magic social media necessarily. I mean, some of it, Magic social media, Magic fans saying, some Magic fans, like a small percentage of Magic fans saying this isn't a good move, this is an overpay, so on and so forth. But just like really around the NBA, like there is a good, contingent of NBA people saying like, no, like Franz is, one of the most like impactful guys in the league at his position and size and what he's able to do defensively. And there's the other side that you could tell, like I don't want to draw attention to the guy, his name or anything like that, because I just don't even feel that he deserves the attention. But there was a video that went semi-viral on Twitter the other day after the extension was announced. And this guy's talking about how Franz isn't worth the max because he went 1 for 15 in game 7. And when he's talking about the Magic front office, you know how I know he has no idea what he's talking about? He kept showing clips of Anthony Parker. Yes, Anthony Parker is the general manager of the Magic, but we all know he is not the lead decision maker when it comes to basketball operations. This guy just went to Google and typed in Orlando Magic GM, saw Anthony Parker and said, okay, I've got to find clips of Anthony Parker, and probably has no idea that Jeff Weltman is the president of basketball operations for the Orlando Magic. But it just, what we tell you all the time is when you see this stuff going on in the national discourse, don't put too much emotion and energy into this kind of stuff, because time and time again, these people talking about the Magic, they just always show you the fact that they don't actually watch the Magic. So why would we pay any attention to what they're saying? Because they don't know what they're talking about. But at the end of the day, happy for Franz. And to your point, Luke, this trajectory that you've been on, you've got to continue to be on that. Franz has got to start flirting with, 23, 25 points per game a season. The 3-point shooting needs to come back a little bit, but he just needs to keep doing all of the other things that he's been doing well. Yeah, would like to see a little bit added to the game each year. Yes, but again, if Franz is anywhere near league average from 3 this season, nobody is questioning this contract whatsoever. So happy that it got done. Had a feeling that it would get done. It seems like, the Magic had other things that they had to take care of, things that were sort of more pressing, because you could get this done anytime between now and the start of the season. So they're like, okay, let's get all these sort of time sensitive things taken care of first, and then we'll come back around and take care of Franz. And next up is Jalen, but we'll talk about that in a couple minutes.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing, and it kind of is taking from Weltman's presser about KCP, but applying the same principle, which was, in that presser, he says, continuity only matters. I'm paraphrasing or just like not getting it entirely correct, but continuity only matters if you're winning. The Magic are winning. We saw and have seen that this past season. The Magic are winning and on an awesome trajectory. In order to keep the continuity, you had to do this with Franz Wagner as well. Like we talk about, this is how much the franchise values as well, and yada, yada, yada. You had to do this. There was no other option if you want to keep Franz Wagner happy. And clearly, some people were like, I was just hoping he'd take a team-friendly deal. The dude's making $7 million. Like, in the grand scheme of things, yes, that's a ton of money. But in the NBA landscape, it's a respect thing. What your salary is, your contract. You don't start taking pay cuts until you're LeBron or KD, getting to the age where you're like, I just want to win again. I want to taste the championship again. Or you're a ring chasing and you take a vet minimum somewhere. Franz Wagner was never going to take a pay cut, and he shouldn't as well. So keeping the continuity was so important, and that was the goal, and they've been able to do that. So congrats to Franz Wagner, and the Magic did what they had to do, and congrats to the Magic.
And one just other note, something that I've seen just over the course of the last couple of years, and I don't want to start talking about like the Magic ownership and people's opinions on them, but something that I've seen from time to time around, Magic centric social media is that like we have cheap owners, the owners don't pay guys, yada yada. They're absolutely paying Franz Wagner, and they paid everybody this season to bring a big piece of this team back. They still have long-term financial flexibility, but they went out. They've now exceeded the cap. I think they've done all the spending they needed to do this season to try to keep this team together. And we'll talk more about some of these contracts. But like, guess who else is getting an extension? Like Jalen's extension is not going to be that far away. I feel pretty confident in saying that. And then Paolo's extension Paolo will end up being like the highest paid player in the history of the Orlando Magic by the time that it's all said and done. And like within the next 5-6 years, that'll be the case for Paolo. So when they're confident that we have a winner and we can floor like a winning team, ownership pays. Like they've shown that throughout the Dwight Howard era, paying Rashard Lewis and bringing in guys like Vince Carter and Gilbert Arenas. Now those moves didn't necessarily all work, but they've proven, in my opinion, that when it's time to pay and it's time to go all in on a winner, they will do that. Now you can argue, I think a lot of it just comes from like the negotiations with Shaq, back in the 90s, and that is totally understandable. But this is some evidence that I think states otherwise. Now, with like everything being official, once the moratorium ended, we got official signings for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Trevelyan Queen back on a two-way, Tristan Da Silva signing his rookie scale contract. Gary Harris is back officially. Mo Wagner is back officially. I think it was Keith Smith, or it might not be Keith Smith, but it was one of those cap guys tweeted out that both Gary Harris and Mo Wagner, their second year on those deals, are both team options. So if the Magic want to get out of those deals after this upcoming season, they do have the ability to do so. Jonathan Isaac, he's re-signing. And some of the numbers that we gave, and those were all estimates, obviously, on the last episode, didn't exactly end up being correct. So you can find all of this on Spotrac, but Patrick Arsenault, who you can find at PArsenault19 on Twitter, he tweeted out really the way that Jonathan Isaac's contract is going to be working out. So they use the full amount available as his guaranteed value for 2024-2025 of $25.1 million. Then the 40% maximum decline to year 2 would be $15,061,254. And then the rest of the contract would go as follows. It's in 2024-2025, again, the $25 million fully guaranteed. Then the 40% max decline, 2025-2026, he'll make 15.1. And there's a 5% standard decline in the 2026-2027 season where he'll make $14.3 million. $8 million of that will be guaranteed. Then there's a 5% standard raise to bring him up to $15 million. That is non-guaranteed in the 2027-2028 season. And then there's another 5% standard decline to the 2028-2029 season for $14.3 million. And that is non-guaranteed. So the last 2 years of that deal, basically the Magic have an out to get out of that. And the third year of the extension is only $8 million guaranteed. So there are partial guarantees after the first 2 years. After the next 2 years, there are partial guarantees, and then just like complete non-guarantees in those final couple of seasons. I haven't seen any specific language like we saw in his last extension where it was like minimum games played and then there are different guarantees at that level. It just seems like that third season is going to be partially guaranteed and the last 2 seasons are non-guaranteed years. So credit to Jeff Weltman. I went to say John Hammond there. Jeff Weltman and Anthony Parker in structuring this deal so that, hey, if J.I. plays and he's healthy, this is a heck of a deal for us. But if he's not healthy, they have protections in place so they can sort of get out of that, Luke.
And that's the name of the game with this front office. They're always covering themselves. They're always somehow able to get their players to take team options on their contracts. They're always able to get them to do things like descending contracts a majority of the time. Jeff Weltman is he puts on a masterclass with these contract negotiations, does what he has to do, honors the player, respects the player, but also looks out for his organization's best interests as well, which is super important, obviously.
Yeah, at this point, and you and I talked about this, everyone knows how much faith and belief we have in this front office. And I feel like we've talked about it like almost ad nauseum. But this is just, to me, again, did the offseason, was it the home run offseason that we necessarily wanted? No, but it was a triple and they were rounding third. And there was just a heck of a throw from the right fielder at the plate and made you go back to third. This was a really good offseason for the Orlando Magic front office. And when we're looking at every time a deal comes out, we're like, oh man, is that going to be structured in our favor? And it almost always is. So them putting trust in Franz Wagner and signing him to that max extension, I just don't have any doubts or any worries about this front office, because once they came in and cleaned up everything, they have acted so responsibly with the cap that I'm just not going to lose sleep at night over any of these deals at this point. Every time we get the details, it's like, oh, wow, that really, it works out for the player. And if things really don't go great, the Magic have ways to get out of this kind of stuff. So I'm just really happy with the way that the front office was able to structure a lot of these deals. All right, a couple of other things to talk about, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Want to give a quick shout out to our patrons that help make each and every episode possible. They help support the show. If you would like to help support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/The6Man Show. Whenever we have brand new patrons, we give them a very special shout out. So shout out to J.N. Ryle, who joined the Patreon at the elite tier level. Really appreciate the support. And we give a special shout out to all of our Hall of Fame and elite tier patrons each and every episode. So let's start by shouting out the Court Cousins, Drew Gooden, Armin, Carson Tulo, Ellis, Jonathan Borges, Normal, Magic Player History, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapong, Donkey Punch, Dave, Palin, Francis Warren, Pierre A., Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Eduardo Sanchez, Daniel, Bobby Skinner, Goody 93, Teddy Sylvia, Dalek Lopez, Fuchsia, Bill Fulton, Emin Lagone, Jose Esquilin, Caleb Pete, Cannibalism, Time Mr. TV, ESPN Really Sucks, Gear 95 Shred, Junior Bruce, African, Shahin 177, Bobby the Don, Himlo, Ban Himro, RM Prov 221, Rapistron, and Magic Kid 714, Mysterious Mosley, Irish Magic Mike, Austin Lampy, Random Hustle Only Franz, Maria, Keith Walsh, Fritz, Bruv Sal, Kason Green, Santi Leon, Kane Eckler, The Distract, Ahmad Simsa, Chansu, Tom Gadsden, Dead Air, Richard Tuttle, Jeremiah Quintero, Magic Wire, Debo 1980, Magic Matt, Michael Thompson, Mama Richmond, Next Napa, What's Up Playoffs 2024, Dylan Fay, David Duffy, Smith Sheiks, Ship Sinks, Bueno Times, Suggs, Muggs, Daniel Anderson, Barry McElcaney, and J.N. Ryle. Again, if you would like to support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/the6man-show. Some additional moves that were not officially announced by the Magic, but were reported. The Magic have renounced their cap holds for Markelle Fultz and Chuma Okeke. Basically, what that means is the Magic no longer have their bird rights. Like, they gave up that cap hold, no longer have those guys bird rights. So it's not like they can go out and sign them to like a massive extension, like exceeding the cap. Some people have said that there are some like room like exceptions and mid-level exceptions. I am still trying to get better when it comes to the cap. I feel like every offseason I get a little bit better when it comes to the cap stuff, but just in terms of those different exceptions, I know there's like the biannual exception, non-taxpayer, mid-level exception, that kind of stuff. It seems like some of those may be available, so there is still a route for Markelle Fultz to come back to the Magic. But it seems like I think a mid-level exception for Markelle Fultz at this point for this team would be a bit of an overpay and wouldn't make a lot of sense. It feels like if you wanted to bring Markelle back, you would have just kept his bird rights and signed him to like a, 1-in-1, almost like a prove it kind of contract potentially. And then Chuma Okeke, Tristan Da Silva, once he's drafted, that he seems like the Chuma Okeke replacement. So I'm pretty confident that Chuma is 100% gone. Markelle Fultz, I'm probably at like 75 to 80% sure. There is still a route, but at this point, it does seem pretty unlikely that he'll be back.
Yeah, and really nothing else to add there. We talked about Fultz the last episode enough. The other thing with now Chuma Okeke seemingly gone is that if he were to come back, he'd have to choose a new number, because
there's also that, which just sort of adds evidence that he's gone.
It has been put out there that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope chose number 3. Selfishly, for me to be able to sleep better at night, I wish he was choosing number 20. But
come on, man, come on, that's not. You're out of line.
No, not at all. You're
out of line. If I can make they're gonna let Chuma, you know in the YouTube comments for sure.
Let me have it. I stand by that. But yeah, so Chuma, yeah, the door seemingly feels like it's slammed with KCP just taking that number 3 number. So yeah, that was the other piece of Magic news we got, is that he will be rocking that number for the Magic this season.
I wonder if it's too late for Kevin, who has the Chuma Okeke jersey for a couple of years ago, to get Kentavious Caldwell Pope on the back of that. Funny enough, Kevin and I both have the jersey. He has Chuma, I have Markelle. So, but I think like the Markelle Fultz will age a bit better than the Chuma jersey, if I had to guess. Another piece of just earth-shattering breaking news that Keith Smith had tweeted out. End of an era, he says. The Orlando Magic renounced the first-round draft rights for Fran Vazquez. Orlando drafted Vazquez with the 11th pick in the 2005 NBA draft. The 41-year-old Spanish big man retired from playing professional basketball after the 1920 season. Someone asked, why haven't they done this before? And then Keith Smith said, never had a reason to. Like, for me, it was just like, can we get this guy off the books? Like, for Magic fans that were hoping and praying that one day Fran was going to come over, from overseas, it's just like, just do this. Get rid of the bad blood. It's never happening. The guy's 1 billion years old at this point. But yeah, the end of an era to finally renounce the draft rights to Fran Vazquez. Would be crazy for him to come out today and be like, I was about to come over, like finally after all these years. That would have been pretty funny, but yeah, sad, but it's past time.
19 seasons is what he played professionally. So hats off to him. I'm sure he made great money. Playing international basketball, you do make relatively good money, especially leagues that, you know, that he's playing in. Yeah, 19 seasons. Like, he stuck around for a reason. And finished his career with averaging 7 and 4. But 19 seasons, like, there's something to be said about that. That is a long freaking time to play any type of professional basketball. Yeah, but rip in peace, Fran Vazquez and his time with the Orlando Magic.
Yeah.
Legend.
Okay. One thing that we haven't talked a ton about just yet, and I don't think we're going to spend that much time talking about it, but it is pretty relevant. Relevant. Good grief. The Revenant, Leonardo DiCaprio. Where are we going with this? No, I think it's relevant. And the only reason that I feel like it's not really worth the time to spend a ton of time talking about it is because I feel like it's an inevitability. I cannot speak tonight. What is going on? Jalen Suggs obviously has not signed his extension just yet. And Jeff Weltman was asked about the status of Jalen Suggs' extension. And although he said, Jalen's super valuable to us, he had a great year. He's, a big piece of what we're doing, moving forward. He's not going to speak on contract negotiations, which Jeff Weltman never does. So that's not like a red flag by any means. But Jalen Suggs, I'm going to look at, it was Theo Lawson, who is in Vegas covering Team USA. He tweeted that Jalen Suggs was getting some three-point shooting work in with the USA select team after the Olympic training camp. Suggs wasn't playing in the scrimmage near the end of practice, but has been out here shooting for roughly 20 minutes now. Jalen not playing in the scrimmage, to me, says that his representatives are still working out the terms of the extension with the Orlando Magic. Earlier in the week, Germany was set to play France in like a Olympics friendly. Mo, Franz, neither of them played in that game because the extensions and the re-signing of the contract for Mo were not official yet. So Jalen not playing in that scrimmage, there's either some type of minor injury that we haven't been made aware of, or just given the timing, I think it makes a lot more sense that the Magic are probably working out the terms of that extension with his representatives. So I would hope, Jalen's going to be here at the USA select team. He wants to really fully participate in everything going on with the Olympic team, with the USA select team. Like, let's get this contract, hammered out and get that finalized so he can really get the full experience. Or otherwise, like, he's just there to hang out, which I don't think he wants to be doing. Again, unless there's some type of minor injury that we haven't been made aware of, but I would be surprised if that was the case.
Yeah, not much to add there for me. I also agree it's got to be on the horizon with Suggs.
Yeah, really should be done hopefully any day now. Again, it seemed like they were going through like the more pressing time sensitive items that we've talked about a little bit earlier, and then had to figure out like the max stuff that's going on with Franz. But like, Jalen is absolutely going to be taken care of, and Franz just like making the amount of money that he's going to be making. I'm hoping that we see Jalen somewhere like $28 to $30 million a year. I wouldn't be shocked if he's in the ballpark of $35 million a year. But for the Magic, and like, again, to their credit, the way that they've been able to negotiate these contracts, like, seeing Jalen under $30 million would be a heck of a deal, I think.
Yeah. Under 30 would be great. I am anticipating like above 30, 31, 32, just above it. That's what I'm anticipating. We'll see what they come out to. But, I mean, it all goes into continuity. Doesn't matter unless you're winning. Magic are winning. You're going to get it done. One way or another, that Suggs extension is going to happen.
All right, last thing that I want to go over is that this weekend we got the official presser from Jeff Weltman, just talking about the moves that were made over the course of free agency. And also the media got to meet with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, for the first time. Really, the major takeaways for me with Jeff, obviously, he's never going to talk about contract negotiations or contract details, any of that stuff. But he talked about Jonathan Isaac and how the fact that they had this leftover cap allowed them, I'm reading between the lines, but what it sounds like to me is that it allowed them to overpay JI this upcoming year to be able to get him on a pretty favorable deal, over the course of the following, the next 4 years, where he's making, $15 and $14 million a year for the level of production that JI is going to give you. Like that's great value as long as he's able to stay healthy. And then obviously talking about how great Franz is, and obviously they believe in Franz moving forward and how good he's been and how he's still only 22 years old. But then just talking about Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and the things that he brings, made a big emphasis talking about durability and how he led, was close to leading both of the championship teams that he played for, in games and in minutes played. Obviously, the shooting that he brings, talking about like over the course of the last few years, there's only like 6 guys that have made the amount of threes that he has made at the percentage that he's made. It's a really short list there. Again, put the emphasis on the durability, but also talked a lot about like the championship experience that KCP is going to bring to this Magic roster, and like a new standard really like for this team, that he's going to be able to say like, hey, if you guys really want to get to the next level, this is what it's going to take. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, we thought was the Gary Harris replacement. He's really like the Joe Ingles replacement, it seems like. And although I love Joe Ingles and what he brought to the team from like a chemistry perspective, and yes, an accountability perspective, I think like KCP's words are even going to carry a little bit more weight than Joe Ingles, because one, KCP is still doing it at a high level, and having that championship level experience to back that up, I think goes a long way. And Jeff Weltman made it seem like, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was their main target. He wouldn't come out and explicitly say that, but from everything that we've heard and everything that's been reported, it seems like KCP was like their guy this offseason.
Jeff gave some interesting insight. Someone asked him about Paul George. Obviously, he was not going to say too much about it, but he said a little bit more than what I honestly anticipated. And he just gave a peek behind the curtain furthermore about just, just because we call an agent about a player doesn't mean we're interested. And that should go without saying. But it was just interesting to me, like him saying that off the back of like a Paul George question, and him essentially like him laying out like, hey, just because we make contact doesn't mean anything at all. We just want to know. Like everyone's talking to everybody, and I am sure that there was something to the Paul George conversation, but clearly not enough, or something happened as we've discussed before on the show. But they pulled the trigger pretty early on KCP for there to be much there with Paul George anyway.
And he sort of like said that to emphasize that like we're trying to get a feeling for like what other players are doing, but what other teams are doing as well. So by talking to a player's representatives, you can kind of piece together what other teams are trying to do as well without having to go to the team and say, hey, what are you guys trying to do? You can also get that like through the agency that represents a player. So just because the Magic were in touch with Paul George's representatives doesn't necessarily mean they were going after Paul George, I think is what Jeff was sort of dancing around the fact. Because again, he doesn't talk about, negotiation strategies and so on and so forth. But no, I thought that was a big takeaway from the presser as well, that like in the future, like, hey, just because we're talking to somebody doesn't mean we're looking at somebody, I guess is the way to put that. And then the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope presser, number one, the guy seems really excited to be here, which I think is huge, and was sort of tongue-in-cheek asked about like, hey, are you looking to get your third title here? And sure, what is he going to say? Like, oh no, I'm just here to get a bag. Like, of course he's not going to say that, but I don't think that's the case either. I do think he sees the possibility of this roster growing into a contending team, and he has the ability to grow with that team and contribute and be a big piece of that. But he said that, hey, like, I'm just as excited to be here as they are to have me. And he did talk about how it was difficult for him to leave Denver, and he sort of waited to see if they were going to come back with an offer. So there were some other reports early in free agency after the KCP signing was reported that, like, hey, like, there was a similar offer from Denver. It doesn't seem like there was a similar offer from Denver. I would guess that if there was a similar offer from Denver, he would still be a Nugget, but that doesn't seem to be the case. But he talked about, like, all the young talent and the young stars that we have here in Paolo and Franz, and he seems super excited to be here, and I just can't wait to see that guy on the floor in the starting lineup next to Jalen Suggs and Franz and obviously Paolo Wendell. He's going to be a big difference maker for this team, I have no doubt.
That duo, that tandem on the defensive end is going to be ridiculous. Also, another thought about KCP, if people are anything like me in terms of looking at, like, KCP's 31, he'll be 32 come New Year, basically. I think like in February. He'll be 32. Is he going to be at the point very soon where, like, his production drops at all, or is he still going to be good? The way I look at it with him is just you going back to that durability piece. I just get the feel, like, him talking about the Magic winning a third, like, being the team that gets him his third ring. I truthfully think that he thinks that, like you said, he believes in this roster that they can get there. But I think he thinks he could probably be a part of it. And that's exciting. And not just the fact that this team has so much promise, but it's like, who's to say if KCP remains as durable as he is and keeps up production, or at least efficiency, then who's to say he doesn't sign another team-friendly deal, and that's when the Magic win the title, right? Like, it's, or contend and make themselves known as, like, the threat here in the next couple years. But then getting to the point where his contract's over, you could see him doing kind of what Gary Harris has done, where he's like, oh, I'm bought into this team. I love the city. I love what they're building. I want to be a part of it any way that I can. I'll sign a team-friendly deal and ride into the sunset here in Orlando, which is kind of what it feels like Gary Harris is going to end up doing long term. Like, Gary's still young, like younger than KCP, but just the fact that he's already taking team friendlies tells me the Magic, given the cap situation, are still in good situations to re-sign these guys to lower amounts. And KCP in a few years could be another case of that, as long as Orlando's still building and the culture is still there and chemistry.
And talking about team friendly, something that I forgot to mention when we were talking about Gary Harris and Mo Wagner, like, those second years are team options. But Keith Smith reported, for a league source that told Spotrac, that both Gary Harris and Mo Wagner waived their implied no trade clauses in their new contracts with the Orlando Magic. He says players who are on a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal with an option receive the ability to block a trade unless waived. So what that says to me, in order to bring those guys back at the numbers that they were brought back at, the Magic said, hey, we'll bring you back at this number, but we need you to waive your no trade clause. That's even more team friendly. The fact that these guys, who typically on a deal that is structured like theirs are, would not be able to be traded, if the Magic want to trade those guys, they can do that. So Gary Harris, midway through the year, if he's playing pretty well, but maybe the Magic want to get more minutes for Jet Howard or Tristan Da Silva, they can move Gary to a contender if they need to be able to do that, right? If there's a team shopping for, like, another veteran wing who can defend and still shoot the ball at a pretty efficient level, the fact that they have the ability to do that, like, again, just another feather in the hat, in terms of contract negotiations for Jeff Weltman. But yeah, back to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Just, like, if you go to his Basketball Reference, these are the number of games played in this guy's career: 80, 82, 76, 76, 74, 82, 69, 67. Those were both COVID-shortened seasons. 77, 76, 76. Like, that dude has missed more than 6 games once in his career, and he missed 8 games, and that was 7 years ago. So this dude is, like, the epitome of durable, and a 37% three-point shooter over the course of his career, in which he's improved drastically since the beginning of his career. Like his last 5 seasons, 38.5, 41%, 39%, 42%, 40% last year. Like this dude is the epitome of durability, 3 and D, and like elite level defense. Like this is a guy who got all defensive team votes last year and is, I think Jeff Weltman, I've seen it across social media, but Jeff Weltman quoted it in the presser, is that this dude is like 96 or 97 percentile in terms of matchup difficulty. So, like, guarding the best player on opposing teams night in and night out basis. You and I were just, like, chatting before the show, and just the thought of, like, a guard, like an elite level guard, coming into Orlando on, like, a Tuesday night, on either, like, a back-to-back or, like, their third game in 4 nights, and they're like, man, I got to deal with Jalen Suggs and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope tonight. Like, that is the epitome of guard hell. And like, there is no way around that.
The upside here as well with KCP being able to stick the best player on the other team is that it frees Jalen Suggs up to be even better offensively than he was for us this past season. To play a bigger role, use more energy on the offensive end. Jalen Suggs is still going to give his all, but if he's able to lighten up a little bit on the defensive end and put more in offensively because KCP has his back on the perimeter, that's all that you need if you're the Orlando Magic. Turning defense to offense as well with KCP to Jalen Suggs, whatever it looks like, Jalen Suggs is going to be able to feast much more offensively this year.
Yep. Look, I really think that's about it. Like, this is a great offseason for the Magic. There is still one roster spot left. Obviously, when that roster spot is filled, we'll talk about it on the show. We'll tweet about it, post it to social media. I'm interested to see what is going to happen there. I don't expect it to be a big move at this point in the offseason, but looking forward to see whoever they bring in. Again, I do think there are worse options than bringing back Markelle Fultz, although, again, doesn't seem likely, wouldn't be my first choice at this point. Anything else that you want to add before we go ahead and wrap this up?
No, nothing left.
All right, that's going to do it for this one, folks. For Luke Sylvia, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to The Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!